Welcome, Colin.
Hey, how's it going, Tom? Great to see you, and hi, everybody.
It's great to see you. I'm so excited for your session. For anyone that isn't familiar with Colin, you should be, because he is one of the biggest Photoshop teachers on earth. He runs the fantastic resource PhotoshopCAFE, which has been going how many years now, Colin?
20 years.
Okay, we probably have some people watching right now that have been around less years than PhotoshopCAFE, which is amazing.
I think it's the longest running Photoshop tutorial site that's still actually active. I don't know any other ones that have been going longer now. So
that's so cool. You're like the OG of the Photoshop world.
OG, yep.
So yeah, please again get that notepad out, take all the notes, because Colin's a fantastic teacher. His sessions are always really jam-packed, full of juicy nuggets and tactics that you can put into your own workflow. Colin, without further ado, what are you going to be sharing with us today?
Today we're going to be using the Sky Builder, and it's going to be really fun. So I'm going to take a photograph, and then we're going to turn it into, just jazz it up a little bit and add some elements in that are just going to make it look a lot more interesting. Yeah.
Incredible.
All right. And you want me to kick off?
Yeah, please take it away.
All right, great. So this is a photograph that I shot in San Francisco a few years ago. And, it's the Golden Gate. This is the Bay Bridge. It's not the Golden Gate Bridge. And it's, it's okay. It's not super exciting. We're going to, the sky's kind of boring. And that's one of the things about California. I live in California, not here, but I live in Southern California. And you would think that blue skies are just like the best thing. I know in UK it is, because, once a year it's a blue sky and everyone goes out and turns red and then suffers for a week. But the blue skies can be terribly boring to look at because there's just not a lot going on. So we're going to play around with that and fix it. But before we do, I want to just kind of crop this photo a little bit, because we got these rocks in the foreground, which are not really that interesting, and just kind of reshape it a little bit. So let's do that now. So we're going to go and choose the crop tool. And one of the little tips for you guys is at the top here, you'll see an option that says delete cropped pixels. If you turn that on, it will change the size of the photograph as well as the canvas. And what does that mean? That means that it permanently will go to a smaller size. So if I pull this over here and I pull this up there, it will crop down and make the photo smaller. If I turn this off, what it's going to do is it's going to change the size of the canvas, but it's not going to reduce the photo. So see this area outside? That will be preserved. And it's a nice idea to do that, because that way, if I make a composition and I want to change it, or I decide I want to, enlarge it later, those pixels are still going to be available. What it's going to do, though, is when I apply that crop, rather than having it as a background, it's going to put the background on a layer. And that also gives you the advantage that you can drag things underneath it. So let's resize this. And by the way, when you're in here and you're resizing and you find you can't do the height and the width independently, what you want to do is just click on clear. Clear doesn't clear the crop. What it does is it clears any of the settings that you've put in here. Now, if you want to go to a specific size, because I get this question all the time, how do I get this to a specific size? So if I turn width, height, and resolution on, and say I wanted to make this 1920 by 1080, do 1920. Right now, it still doesn't know what it is. Is this 1920 yards, feet, inches, pounds? I mean, it can't be pounds, but type in PX, and then you're telling it, okay, I want to work in pixels. Oh, okay, gotcha. So now it would be 1920 pixels by 1080 pixels. And by the way, the width always comes first in every measurement. So right now I'm setting this to a 1920 by 1080, which is HD resolution. So this means maybe you want to put this onto a video. So now I know that this is going to fit the right size. Because I'm working in pixels, I don't have to put resolution. It doesn't matter. But if you were doing this in inches or centimeters, you would want to put in, like 300 PPI or 300, or 72 for screen, 300 for print, or whatever, because then that tells it the size. But when you're using pixels, then it doesn't matter the resolution, because this is a hard number. And in fact, when you're sizing things on screen, pixels is all that matters. So one of the things I'm seeing here too is, look at this, it's not level. I'm really bad at this, by the way. A lot of my photographs, I struggle to get it level because I get so excited about the moment that I don't level it. How many of you guys do that? Let us know in the chat. All right, so I'm going to rotate.
I definitely do.
So what I'm doing is I'm rotating it. And notice as I rotate, it gives me this nice grid, as you saw when I grabbed that corner there, outside the corner. And I can see, okay, this is going to be nice and level now. And then when you're ready, you can hit the Enter key, choose another tool, or hit the checkbox. It doesn't really matter what you do. And right there, now we've set our size to that HD resolution. Now, if I didn't want to work in that resolution, I can still go in and crop this and recrop it. Watch what happens when I grab that crop tool. Notice all those pixels are there because we didn't delete those. And also this helped me a lot because notice when we rotated this, we didn't get transparent edges. Had I gone in and I chose delete crop pixels, when I went to rotate this afterwards, there would be little gaps in there because it would have cropped it down. So it just gives you more flexibility. Let's just kind of change this a little bit. I'm going to bring it in. And notice right now, see how now it's constrained? That was that thing I told you about earlier on. And that's because now we've put settings in here. If I hit clear, it clears those settings. And now I can change the shape of this. So it's just kind of I'm going to leave a little bit in the corner here just so I can show you a way to get rid of that just for fun. So we're going to purposely leave that there. But I'm going to make this a little bit taller and maybe squish it in a bit more. And that might make it better for social media. All right, so we're just going to click. Now, this here is a problem. I'm going to show you how to get rid of that. There's two ways to get rid of it. One of them is the patch tool. Like people always ask me, what's the difference between the healing brush, spot healing brush, or the patch tool? The healing brush and the spot healing brush are great for getting rid of little things here and there on the photo, like maybe if there was a boat here or something we didn't want. The patch tool is good for getting rid of larger areas. And so we're just going to make a selection around there. And then you can just drag to a different portion and release. Sometimes it works good and sometimes it doesn't. In this case, it's not working very well, and that's fine. You can change the different settings by playing around with the diffusion. That was worse. Let's see if we turn it up. And if this doesn't work, it's no big deal. Yeah, no big deal. So we're going to now use the second method because sometimes the patch tool works and sometimes it doesn't. So what we're doing is
this is why I enjoy having a few options in your locker, Colin.
Yeah.
You should never be a one-trick pony in Photoshop because it's just good to, different options suit different pieces.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. There's people ask you, why don't you do, it's funny because when I do a YouTube video, I always get the, why didn't you just answers? Why didn't you just use this? Why didn't you just use that? Because sometimes it doesn't work. In a situation like here, it didn't work very well. Mm-hmm. And like you say, it's good to have more than one tool because some images give themselves better to other ones. So I'm just going to make a selection around here, and we'll just use content aware fill instead. So that's the Shift Delete, and that will open up the fill dialog box. That would be Shift Backspace if you're on Windows. And then we're going to change the fill to content aware. Click OK. And wow, that was interesting. It just flipped it. That's a very interesting. I've never had that happen before.
Yeah, Photoshop's hating this rock.
All right, so then we go to another method. Clone stamp tool, brute force.
It's so funny. It must be like algorithmically. There's sometimes things which are just particularly stubborn.
It's hilarious, actually, because we're doing this live. But I'm not fretting, by the way. I'm not at all worried about this. It's not like, oh, no, the show's over. Everything's working. But,
when it's a cucumber. That's what happens with 20 years in the game.
Yeah, right. So this, when I was practicing this, it didn't happen. So no big deal. We're going to use clone stamp then. And so to use the clone stamp, you just hold down the Alt or the Option key and click, and that will sample an area. And then we can just go over there and now just paint. So I was not at all worried that we couldn't get rid of that. In fact, let's just get that corner a little bit better. And here's a little tip, actually, when you're using things like the this tool here. patch tool. Maybe the content aware might have worked rather than normal. So, you know, there's always plenty of options. So if something doesn't work one way, don't panic. There's plenty of other ways to try it. All right, great. So we just kind of set this up. I'm not going to do any color correction or anything like that right now, because what I want to do is put the elements in here first. So when I do color correction, I can do it all together, and that way it just kind of ties everything together. So you don't want to necessarily do this at the beginning. Like, I always do the color correction pretty much as the last step. All right, so I'm going to go into, and I've got this little bar here. Can I just move that out of the way? There we go.
Yes.
There's this screen sharing app, in case you guys didn't know. All right, so I'm in Bridge right now, and this is the Sky Builder.
Oh, Colin, I think if you click on hide.
Oh, yeah, okay.
That should hopefully do it.
Yeah, I actually just moved it to the top, so it's fine. It's
cool.
out of the way. Yeah, thanks for that. So here's the Sky Builder, and this is something that's really useful. Okay, so for those, you know, I know you've got all the builder crew here from Design Cuts that are very familiar with these assets. For people that are coming in, maybe some of the cafe crew, or people that are not familiar with what the builders are, I'm just going to take a second and just let you know what you can do when you're in Bridge is if you click on this little thing, you can show items from subfolders, and this will just show you everything that are in here. What the builders are pre-prepared elements that you can use in your composite. So whether you're using a simple composite, or you want to use these to build something from scratch, or whether you have something else and you just want to add some, you know, finishing touches in here. But to me, these are super exciting. A lot of people in the photography community are not as aware that some of these kinds of things exist. And, you know, we've got things like birds. You know, how often do you want to just pop some birds into your scene or something like that, or clouds? And we'll get into the clouds in a second. You'll see how cool these are. But these are basically cut out already, and they're layered already, and they're assets that we can just simply drag in to our composites. It just saves a ton of time. And look how many different ones we have here.
So much of photo compositing is cutting stuff out, and you're right, it can be very lengthy. So for me, I love it's almost like a collage. You just get everything already cut out and extracted, and can drag and drop it in.
Yeah, exactly. So what we're going to do here is the Sky Builder for Photoshop, and also these are surprisingly inexpensive. Like, you would think, oh man, these are going to be like, you know, $99 or something. They're not. They're very reasonably priced. And that's not a sales pitch. I'm just throwing that out there. All right, so let's have a look. We're going to go into the skies, and these come in 2 different flavors. So we can go into the JPEGs here and just grab these, or we can go under the PSDs, which I'm going to use a PSD so I can show you guys. Look at these different skies. And the one I'm going to be using today is where are you? It's one of these ones here. So look at this. We've got, you know, ones with snow. We can do sunrises, sunsets. We've got, you know, all kinds of different things in here. We've got the blue skies, which I don't need in California. But we see all these different things. I just wanted to show you guys all that. Look at that. So these are the presets, guys. And let me just go back in here and see what else we have. We have the clouds, and this is actually where I'm going to be going. I'm going to be bringing the clouds. So I don't want to do the whole sky. I just want the clouds. So I'm going to use the soft clouds here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open it inside of Photoshop. And this is what makes these super unique, rather than just taking a photo of a cloud, which, you know, I've got hundreds of them on my hard drive. But if you look at the cloud, it's broken into different elements. And so you can go in here and you can literally, these are built. These are different clouds. Look at this. So we've got the top clouds. We've got clouds on the horizon, which are the ones down the bottom. And then we have the fog in the background. And these are also broken into layers. So why does this matter? It matters because you can place elements in between the different clouds and build some depth. And you'll see what I'm going to be doing with that. So I'm just going to drag this into the photo. And we're going to drag it on top. Give it a second. And this is going to be too big because it's super high resolution, which is good. And I'm going to zoom out here. And by the way, if you can't see the handles, here's a trick here. Just Control 0 or Command 0 on Mac, and it'll let you see the resizing handles. So this is how big that sky is. So it's really high.
Huge.
Yeah. And look at this. I'm at 17% magnification. So that tells you anything. So I'm holding down the Alt or the Option key, and this lets me do this from the center. And see this little one here? It's called the frame helper. Those little lines are showing me the edge of where this was composed. So if I want to go to the original composition, I can go to there. I could go further if I wanted, but this just kind of helps give you a little bit of a guide. And I'm going to bring them up to about there, hit enter, and let's zoom in. And don't worry about that line. We can just turn that off in the helper. So that's the nice thing about these. Look at that. And there we go. They're on top of our photo. Let me hide everything. And you can see, look at that, before and after. So we've got these clouds in here now. It's definitely starting to look a little more interesting.
Well, it looks super natural as well. You haven't even done like any adjustments to it.
Yeah, and I just applied it in, and it does. It looks very realistic, and you can see how some of those are even going over the bridge there. See that in the foreground element? So it just blends in nicely. And these are pretty subtle ones. You know, as you saw when I was scrolling through, there's definitely more dramatic ones. And I'm just going to close this down. I don't need it. And I could have opened it and placed it inside the document. There's another way of working. All right, let's go into Bridge here, and let's add some other elements in here. So we're going to go back to our sky builder, and I'm going to open up the contrails. And you can see there's different ones here. So why don't we open these up? And I'm just going to grab a couple, and I'm just going to open this, open in Photoshop. And let me just show you how this works. And by the way, I'm just doing it this way right now. Wow, that's big. The other way I could do is I could just drag these out of Bridge, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. So, you know, if I wanted to add a contrail here, make it just kind of interesting, I could add those in there like that. So you can start to customize and build these a little bit yourself. I just dropped the opacity down. And so if you wanted to make it, you know, of course you can rotate them. You can do, you know, all those kind of things. So that's just an option. And let me open up Bridge here beside it so I can show you what you can do.
You've got a very busy toolbar going on down there, Colin. All the apps.
Yeah, one or two things in there. Yeah. So if I want, I could just drag it in here. This is probably a faster way of working. See what I did there? I just opened up Bridge and just dragged it in. So now it's starting to look more like a California sky because there's a lot of aircraft around here.
Although, wasn't it weird when the world went into lockdown? Such clear skies. We had a few weeks here in the UK where just blue skies and no trails.
Yeah, it really was. The ironic part about it, you know, it's like, you know how life is. You know, you work really hard so you can make enough money so you can go on a holiday. To speak British terminology, we call it a vacation here. But you don't have the time to go on the holiday because you're too busy working. But if you want to have the time to have the holiday, you're not working, and then you can't afford to go on holiday. So it's kind of like the same thing. It's like we had the most clean air ever, but you couldn't go out because it was quarantine.
Yeah, the irony.
Yeah, the irony. All right, so let's go in here and let's look at some aircraft. And once again, yeah, I could open up this PSD and I could just drag things out of the PSD, or I could go into the pings or the PNGs. I think we call them ping. Do you call them ping?
Yeah, sometimes I like it. Honestly, Colin, I've spent years just trying to get a handle on whether it's GIF or GIF.
Yeah, that's a good one. So, you know, no one.
Apparently, the creator went on record saying it's GIF.
Yeah, I still think he's wrong. And the reason for that is because it's an acronym for graphic interchange format, and no one says JAFFIC. Traffic.
Right.
Traffic.
That makes me feel better. I was thinking GIF for years. So
I'm a GIF guy, but you know, who knows?
That's why we get on, Colin.
It's one of those unsolved mysteries. All right, so I'm going to add an airplane in here. So I'm just going to drag that in and just resize it. And so I'm going to bring it up here somewhere. Right now, it's not looking very realistic, but we're going to change that. And so let's put that plane up here somewhere. Make it a little smaller. Pop it up there. All right. So in order to do the final, this is where the advantage of having these clouds. Watch this. If I go down here and I start to drag it between some of the clouds, let's get it down here. I'm going to get it below the horizon, probably below the fog. See that right now? See how you start to see a little bit of the clouds coming through? Or if I take it all the way underneath, it's also going under the background fog. So see what I'm doing? See how I'll zoom in so you guys can see. See how it goes under the cloud? And I'm going to have it coming through the cloud. Now, could you imagine trying to mask that out?
Oh, yeah. It would be a nightmare.
It would be a nightmare. Yeah, so that's one of the things I like about these builders is the fact that I can put things, nest them in the clouds and different things like that. All right, so let's go back to Bridge again. And this time we're going to do a parachutist. Now, I'm going to leave it up to your imagination whether or not this person parachuted out of this airplane. I'm not going to answer that mystery. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm being really bad right now. You know what I'm not doing? Well, I guess they are named already, but I'm not naming my layers. So I'm being a little bit lazy. But what I'm going to do, see how this is under the cloud? So this guy, if these clouds were real and this person was there, they would be bigger than Godzilla if they're behind those clouds. So I want to put them in front of the clouds, so I'm going to drag them to the top. You always want to think about that. There we go. Think about the atmospheric perspective. As objects get closer to you, they are more vivid. And as they get further away, there's more atmosphere and, fog, haze, different things like that. And it's called atmospheric perspective because it gives perspective of size. Because when this is against the sky, there's no sense of scale, right? So you just got something here. I mean, imagine if this guy was above the mountains. Like if I was to drop him down really faint, this could be a 5,000 foot tall guy above these mountains in the distance. And the atmospheric perspective is what gives you the hint. See, if I put him there, you'd be like, okay, he's behind that airplane. And it's not necessarily because of the strings on the parachute. You can't even barely see those. So see how when I do that, now it brings them forward. So that also gives you a sense of scale as well as distance.
I think for everyone watching, that is definitely one for the notepad because it's these kinds of things. It's so easy to skip over or not think about, but it can really kind of destroy the realism of your image.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So what I'm going to do now is I feel like I want to put a little bit of a sunbeam behind him. So I'm going to create a brand new layer right now. And we're going to go to the brushes. Now, I'm going to use something out of another set. The last time I was here, I was working with you. We did something with the Ultimate Universe Creator or Builder. Is it the Universe Builder?
Yeah.
And one of the things I just loved, and since I've used that, I cannot get enough of this particular. There's a couple of brushes in here, so I've got too many brushes in my thing. And for the fact that I actually love these brushes with all the brushes I have, saying something.
That's cool.
And of course, right before this, I selected the brushes. And when you go live, of course, there. Let me just collapse some of this. My apologies, guys, for this. Too many.
It's pretty interesting insight into your massive brush collection. You're not alone. We've got a lot of design cutters with infinite brush collections, font collections. We actually had Jacob Cass on yesterday as our final session on our branding day. Colin, he's got 61,000 fonts.
Wow. How long does it take Photoshop to load when he starts up?
True.
Actually, what I should have done, here's a tip for you guys and also for myself, just scale it down. It's a lot easier to go through things and find them. And here we go. It's the Ultimate Universe Creator. And these brushes, I just literally use them everywhere now. There's two of them I'm going to show you. I just love them. The light beam. And the other one is the flare. So let me show you what these do. I'm going to grab the light beam right now. And if you look at my work in the last couple of months, you're probably going to see this everywhere. All right. So what I'm going
That's
to
really
do,
cool that you've kept on using them so often. It's great to
yeah.
hear.
Well, when I find a tool or an asset that I find useful, I use it all the time. It's kind of like fonts. I bet you the guy with 65,000 fonts probably still uses the same 3 fonts all the time.
That's exactly what he said. Yeah, you have your go-tos.
Yeah, so it's kind of like that. So I have certain brushes that I love, and this is one of them. And I'm going to apply it here right now. So we're going to give it boom. You know what? I want to make this bigger. I'm just using the bracket key on the keyboard, and boom! Look at that. Just
Nice.
add
That's so
something.
cool.
You know what? I'm even going to go bigger. I'm going to get a little bearing on it. Since it's a Friday, I'm going to. And you know what? If it's not exactly where you wanted it, the nice thing about brushes, I can just move it around. So let's put it right there. And so this is going to come behind him. And then I'm going to put another one above. So I'm creating a new layer.
Love how huge you made that. Just apologies for everyone watching at home. I didn't realize Colin was going to be operating with such wild abandon as this, but
I know. I just, such a big brush for a Friday. I know, it's crazy. Okay, so I'm making this smaller so you can see these are also super high resolution. And so this one is, I like to use these two in tandem. And I'm just going to click again and make sure that goes above the Parachutist. And all it's doing is it's just giving me a little bit of light also going above. And I'm going to drop the blend mode of this into a soft light. And see what it's doing is just kind of making it look like the light's going through the parachute a little bit. Let me zoom in so you guys can see a bit better. So with just the one on the back, because this is semi-transparent, right? These kind of canopies. And so here, it's not making it necessarily look like the light, there's another sun in front of it. All it's doing is just letting the light go through. And a soft light might not be enough. Let's go to a hard light. And you drop it to there and bring the opacity down. There we go. And see what's happening is just kind of bursting through. And that was kind of what I wanted. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to do a little bit of dodging and burning, so to speak, or just lightening and darkening on the parachute. So we've got the Parachutist here, and I'm going to apply an adjustment layer, which is going to be brighter. I don't want it everywhere, but I want it in certain places, especially the canopy. Because if you ever looked at these kind of things, tents, canopies, flags, and they're backlit, these kind of tend to light up and be quite bright.
Mm-hmm.
So dodging and burning is something that actually comes from the darkroom. It's, even though we're not really dodging and burning anymore, it's just a term that's carried over from the darkroom. Let me show you. There's the tools here. And see, this happens in a darkroom. I'm sorry. I'll leave that alone. I actually stole that joke from Scott Kelby. So the dodge and burn, the dodge tool is, when you were going through an enlarger, you would create, some kind of a shape. You would cut out, a frisket or what they call it, a flag. And then when the light is shining onto the developing film or the developing print, by blocking it, you're blocking the amount of light coming in there. And because you're working with a negative, that makes those areas brighter. The burn tool actually comes from cupping your hand. That's where that shape comes from. And you're letting the light shine through, and you're directing the light. So you're controlling where that light is hitting. So the dodging is taking away the light, which is making it brighter because it's a negative. Remember, everything's flipped. And then the burn is making it darker by adding the light to the areas you want. And Ansel Adams was a big proponent of that. And he didn't invent it, but he definitely made it very famous. So that's why, so if we want to darken something in a particular area, we burn it. If we want to lighten it in a particular area, we dodge it. And that's where those terms came from. And the sponge,
I didn't know that, actually.
Room, the sponge, you actually take away some of the chemicals by sponging them out, and that doesn't allow the color to fully saturate. So that's where they came from.
Cool.
All right. And I mean, that's one of those interesting things, right? It's like the save icon. If you're younger and you haven't been around film and things like that, then, which is completely understandable. My favorite one is, the save icon. It's a floppy disk. I mean, a lot of people have never seen a floppy disk. And it was actually kind of funny because someone, saw a floppy disk. There's my nephew, and I was like, "Hey, check this out." And he goes, "Oh my God, it's a 3D print of a save icon." Bad joke. All right, moving on.
No, that's so true though. Like, what would you think? Seeing a save icon, it would just be an icon. Like,
Right.
I'm Colin, I'm only 32, so I'm still pretty young, but I grew up with no internet, using floppy disks for things, the old Walkmans, like the tapes, listening to tapes. So even in my lifetime, it's like things have changed so dramatically.
Yeah, but Guardians of the Galaxy made the Walkman cool again.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
All right, so let me tell you guys what I'm doing here. When I was mentioning the dodging and burning for lightening and darkening, I'm going to do exactly the same thing, but I'm going to be using an adjustment layer rather than the tools, because the adjustment layer gives me a little bit more control over the tones. So with that Parachutist selected, I just went under the adjustment layer and created a new curves adjustment. I haven't changed anything yet, but I just wanted to bring it up. Now, here's the thing about an adjustment layer. It affects all the layers underneath. In this case, I don't want to do that. I only want to affect the parachute. So see this little icon at the bottom? This will clip that, and see how that little arrow appeared? Directly to the layer underneath. So now when I make the adjustments, it's only going to affect that layer, and it's not affecting the entire image. Now, if you didn't want to click that icon for some reason, maybe you weren't in the properties panel, and you're just in here, if you hold down the Alt key, and that would be Option on Mac, go between the two layers, see that little square appears? Mm-hmm. When that happens, click, and that will clip, and notice that icon is on there now. And if you want to take it off, just do the same thing, Alt or Option, click. And so that just saves you from having to go to the panel over here to do it. And also it works with different layers. So right now we're clipping an adjustment. We could be clipping, a shape, let me just quickly show you, because I think this is a useful lesson for you guys. So say I was doing something like, I don't know, let's just do something weird like a gradient overlay. This is not something I'm necessarily going to use, but it actually looks pretty good. So
it's a happy accident. That's what we in the industry call it.
Yeah. So, if I want to change the color here, I can go in and apply these gradients, which I think I'm going to do. These look quite nice. Now, what do you guys think?
Pretty cool gradients.
Do you guys like these more purple colors, or do you prefer the blue colors? I'm going to let you in the chat vote on it. Blue.
Okay. What are the options? Purple, blue. Are we going outside of those two?
All kinds of options here. We've got reds. We could go nuts here. We could go, into reds, pinks, oranges. But I think we have to limit the options, because otherwise, we got greens. So I'm going to say we're going to go between the purples or the blues.
I think purple. All right, there we go.
Okay, so we applied that. I hope you guys understand how I did that. I just went under the adjustment layer here and chose a gradient. And then that's clipping, because we're already clipping into that area. Mm-hmm. So awesome. Good. All right, so there we go. We got purple rain. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to brighten this up. Whoa, look at that. That's crazy. And this is going to be too bright for the whole thing, which is fine. And what we're going to do, see this mask? It comes with that layer mask right there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to invert that mask. Control-I. Boom. See, everything is gone now. And then what's going to happen is I'm going to paint with a white brush. So this is back to how it was originally. And now if I grab a brush, and I'm just going to use a normal brush, I'm not going to use a flare brush anymore. And by the way, when you create a brush in here, or you choose a brush, you get favorites. This is not favorites, but recently used brush. I don't know why this doesn't go all the way to the end. There's a feature request for Adobe. Like, why?
Adobe, if you're listening, Adobe.
All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to paint with white. And now, let me plug my Wacom tablet in. I have, take 1 second here, guys. And like literally, it's only going to take 1 second there. It's plugged in.
That's right, guys. He's got it there in his pocket, ready to go at a moment's notice.
Yeah, because I got this new Canon, new Sony camera, and I was actually just loading up some footage off my card last night. So I unplugged the USB-C from my Wacom. All right, so here we go. So we're going to paint with white, and notice as we do that, see how we can start to bring in the color. So we're going to let that color just fade in a little bit from that new color. Notice I didn't do the whole thing. So it's just coming on there. And so we get a little bit of tinge of that purple coming through and interface to the blue. I could do the whole thing purple if we wanted just in the top, but I kind of like it kind of blending like that. I think it looks more interesting. And that's kind of giving us that parachute. All right, we're getting there. Now, one of the things that's really going to set this alive, and I've been kind of saving the best to last, is the birds. I love the birds. You guys ever watch the movie Gladiator? You remember when they showed the Colosseum? What made that shot in the Colosseum? The flocks of birds flying out. Like, you see it all the time. Right? Ridley Scott's a master of that.
It's so funny you mentioned that, because they just added it to Netflix, and I haven't seen Gladiator since I was a kid. So I'm going to rewatch it probably this weekend, actually, getting some downtime after the birthday.
Nice. Yeah, that'll be fun. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. It's a great movie, one of my favorite movies.
We've got an inside joke with the team that I do the Gladiator thumb, whether I like something internally.
Oh, that's funny. So you're the emperor, the Caesar.
The evil one.
Yeah. So I'm going to drag this flock of birds in. Now, you guys have seen the birds everywhere, right? You always see birds. And now, if I wanted to cut these out and photograph them myself, I could do that. But it would take a little bit of time.
Yeah, especially when you get a flock. Maybe if it's a single bird, but a flock takes forever.
Yeah, and even trying to photograph them. And, and who knows, when they built this, they might have just taken a whole bunch of pictures of one bird and then turned it into a flock. Or maybe they photographed the flock. Who knows? But the green screen must have been really big. So what I'm doing here is I'm just dropping the opacity down, and that's just, once again, giving it that atmospheric perspective. And sometimes you don't have to, I could drag it below. Let's do that a little bit here. I'll drag it below the clouds. We can see how that works. So see what we did there? We just popped those in, and see how now they're blending into the scene? And I'm just putting them under there. And so I did a mixture, of course, as you saw that was a mixture of layers and also opacity. So we dragged those birds down, and I dropped the opacity down about 57%. There's no magical number that, it has to be 57%. It just looked about right to me.
Yeah.
So they're not front and center. All right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add we haven't done any of the coloring and toning yet. So now we're going to do this, and this is going to kind of bring things together. It's always kind of like at the end. I do the composite. I like to position and scale and just put the elements in place first. And what I'm doing here is I'm holding down the control or the command key and clicking. And this is how I can select, different layers and different things like that. And let's just bring that down a little bit more. So this is where it's going to really tie when you get this. We're going to go to the very top here. There's a couple of ways you could do this inside of Photoshop, and maybe we'll do a little bit of both. I'm going to apply a LUT. So if we go under the adjustment layers, these LUTs, you look under color lookup, and Photoshop comes with a few. And these are almost like presets. And if you click on here, these are the ones that all come with Photoshop. So these are a series. It's not just applying, just a color like we did with the gradient. This is the whole tonal and color adjustment. This is, like what they use in movies. And I'm going to have a look. What does full color look like? Boom, look at that. See how it just came alive by applying that color LUT? And if we look at this before and after. So this is working two ways. One, it's bringing out the colors that are here in the image already.
It's like and the other thing is subtle getting towards sunset kind of time.
Yeah. And also what it's doing is every single layer underneath is getting. So it's going on the birds, it's going on the plane, the photo, the parachutist, even the sun's getting a little bit. And then what it's doing by adding that little bit of color to every single layer, it ties a composite together. Because matching the color can be difficult, right? But if you put a color over the top, it's automatically going to start matching those colors for you. So it saves you a little work. So that's a first step. And then the next step, we're actually going to put a little bit of color in here from the sunset. So we're changing the time of day now. So I'm going to create a new layer on top. And I might move this layer down in a little bit. We'll see. And I'm grabbing the gradient here. And I want to choose the foreground to transparent gradient. Now, if you don't see this at the top, it's because by default, it's under basics. And so if you collapse everything, by the way, I hit the control key and click that arrow will open or close all of them at once. Works for brushes and everything else as well too. So if you want to quickly go through all the different folders inside of Photoshop, that works for any of the presets. And so this starts under basics. I dragged it to the top so that way these are always going to be visible because this is
that's cool.
Foreground to transparent, foreground to background, and black to white. These are the three you're going to use all the time. So I'm using foreground to transparent. I'm going to change the foreground color. Let's give it a nice kind of a golden color right now. So we go down here. And that's up to you, you know, what you want to use. And when you see that little warning on the side there, don't worry about that. All that's telling you is it's not a web safe color.
I didn't realize that. Okay.
So you can click on it there, and that'll give you a color that's in gamut. Actually, it's out of gamut. So actually what it is. And so
there's a lot of people kind of marveling at how realistic the photo looks already.
All right. So what I'm going to do now is I've got this gradient set up, and it's going to create this golden color to transparent. So I'm just going to drag it across here, and this is putting a color overlay there. And now we're just going to change the blend mode because it doesn't look very realistic yet. But notice as we go through some of these different blend modes, that pink is cool. It's not what we're going to use, but see how this is starting to look like there. The screen mode looks like an actual flare. If you've ever shot any sunset pictures or around that time of the day, you're going to see this kind of get into the shots.
It's like really soft light.
Yeah, and it's giving it light. And if you don't like, you know, where it is, of course, you can always, you know, drag out the gradient again, apply it to more of the picture, which doesn't look bad. I'm going to drop the screen down, just the opacity down a little bit. There we go. So
you know what your friend Tony Harmer calls that when you hovered over opacity and dragged it, and the little hand icon?
What's that?
So he said it last time he joined me for a session at Design Cuts. He said he calls it stapler accident finger because it looks like a little stapler. A staple rather goes where the finger is, and I haven't been able to get it out of my head, and we've literally seen community members calling it that. So it's caught on.
Which tool is that?
So you know, instead of like, it's such a neat trick actually with any of the settings. Like if you go on opacity, you don't have to actually click down and drag it. You can just click on opacity. That see where you get the little mark. See the side of the finger, stapler accident finger.
Oh, that's funny. I might have to steal that. That's great. So one of the things I feel like I want to do here is we're losing the flare. So I'm going to grab the flare and drag it above. And we might also do it with this flare too. So let's see what we can do. Okay, so that's working. It's too bright now. So I'm just going to bring it down. Actually, you don't want to do it. I'm going to double it up. So Alt or Option key will create a copy. And I'm going to drag that under. So now we've got one underneath the Parachutist. But I want to put it, it's too bright. So all I'm going to do is just drop the opacity down a little bit on that. And then we could just kind of bring it up, so that's giving us that nice light flare that we wanted without, you know, overwhelming the image. Maybe a little more.
Nice.
There we go. And so now we're ready for the final step, which just really brings it together, is we're going to go into Camera Raw and do an adjustment. So what I want to do is I want to take all of these layers. See, we've got all those layers. There's two ways we can create a composite layer on top, or a composite layer, however you want to say it. But what I'm going to do is hold the Shift key, and I'm going to select them all. So we have all the layers selected, and I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to convert to a Smart Object. So this puts all of this together inside the Smart Object. So now I can go into Camera Raw. I can apply an adjustment. So let's do that right now. So we're going to choose Filter, and we're going to go to Camera Raw Filter. And notice, because we didn't crop it, all those pixels are showing. Doesn't really matter. We're just focusing on this area. But that's how much is still available if we wanted to.
Yeah, I love how much is preserved. It's so non-destructive.
So I'm going to pull in the highlights. And notice what the highlights do. See how it just pops the detail in the clouds there? So I'm going to do that. I'm going to get a little aggressive with this just for fun. I might even get more aggressive than I did for the cover photo, if you guys don't mind.
Yeah, go nuts. Like you said, it's a Friday.
It's a Friday, so I'm going to get a little crazy with this, because I'm actually very subtle with my adjustments. Normally, you go through different phases, right? So when you start, you discover a new adjustment and you filter, and you apply it too much.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go through a phase where you don't apply it enough, and then you go to a phase where you're just find the right amount. And I'm past there now. I'm at the point where I'm probably doing just a little bit too much and not too much. So I'm going to click OK and see what that did, the difference. If we look at this before. Oh, actually, I didn't even have to do that. Why did I do that? Let's just redo, because I'm in a smart object. So I can just show you before and after. And if you want to split the diff, all you need to do is just click here. And this brings up the blending options, which is a nice thing about using the smart object, because it applies Camera Raw as a smart filter, which means if I want to, split the diff, I can go to 50%, or I can go to 0. So we can dial it in. So maybe go too far inside of Camera Raw and then dial it back to something that's a little bit more believable. So we can do that. And here's the other thing about going inside the smart object. The reason I chose a smart object is because those layers are still there. So if I double click, this is going to open it up as a PSD. And look, all the layers are there. So I can make any changes or adjustments. And then when I hit save, it's going to update here inside this smart object. So always, when you can, use non-destructive techniques. Non-destructive techniques means use smart objects and things that are not baked into the photo, like adjustment layers, rather than applying adjustments directly to the photo, because that gives you flexibility later on. So if I wanted to change anything, I could. Like if I wanted to get rid of the sunset, let me show you. Let me double click.
Oh yeah, this will be fun actually.
And if I don't want this effect anymore, just turn it off. Control S to save it. And we can go back to our image. Look, boom. And that's without it. Or if I want to turn it back on, we can go there. If you felt like, you know what, it was great, but it was too much. Okay, let's drop the opacity down a little bit. Control S to save it. And then we go here and it updates. So this is just giving us an incredible amount of flexibility.
Love it.
So I think we're about there with the image.
Colin, what's your Instagram actually? I think that's what most people have been using.
It's PhotoshopCAFE.
I thought so. I just wanted to make sure we got that right. But yeah, if the team could link up all of Colin's platforms, definitely go and support him. He just produces a huge amount of content and just has this enormous repository that's built up over 20 years. So please go support Colin. And again, we were honored that you joined us. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for having me, guys. And thanks for those kind words. I think the white balance is off on my camera now. I'm looking at it.
Well, we really appreciate your time. All right. Take care, mate.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks again.
Thank you, everybody. All right.